Jake, Crulee podcast, episode 17. I want to thank you all for tuning into another transmission. Podcast by podcast, I'm connecting, I'm learning, I'm just diving deeper into this experience we're having. So I'm really grateful for you, Charles, to show up today on this podcast and share your story. I feel like, because I've listened to, a couple of your interviews that you've done, and I've taken things away from them. So being able to give a space for you to share your life experience with myself and with the listeners, I'm forever grateful for that. So I want to just hand this over to you briefly and just allow you to introduce yourself.
I'm very glad to be here, Jake. Thank you for the opportunity. Well, I'm an author. I'm a father, first and foremost. I'm a survivor. I'm a U.S. Army Infantry Veteran. I've lived with post-traumatic stress going on over 40 years now. I'm in addiction recovery from crack cocaine for over 30 years now. And alcohol, I can say I've cut down a hell of a lot. Like I quit for the first couple of years that I was, or good amount of time that I was in the military. And then I only drank like maybe here and there, random. And I like now these past since COVID came, I haven't had a drop of alcohol. Before then, I was having maybe, and I stress maybe, a six-pack in a year. I just don't want any mind-altering substances in me.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you why did you so when did you begin drinking, and when did you come to realize it was a problem for you?
I began probably 14, 15 years old. Me and my friends just, started experimenting like kids do,
Yeah.
and so at that time, I just started drinking and drinking and drinking, and it became more of a problem as time went on. And then it became a problem as I got more into smoking pot and more into using crack cocaine. Once I combined it with other things, other substances, that's when everything became a problem.
Right. So it began with the drinking, and then you went to weed, and then you started to experiment in these other illicit drugs. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, yep.
What impacts did like crack have on you, and which was the hardest to, let's say, quit?
I would say the hardest to quit would probably be the crack cocaine. That was in the military. Well, I quit everything when I went into basic training, and well, that quitting everything like that was the hardest thing to do. I mean, I almost didn't make it through
Mm.
because just the sheer shock to my body, and then the shock on top of working out all the time, and the strain that I put my body through, and that, just, like I said, I just almost didn't make it through. It was really strenuous, but it actually showed me what my body is capable of too. At the same time,
Could you take us back to your childhood? Because I know you've had quite a difficult childhood experience into your adolescence. So could you just like describe to us and describe to me your childhood upbringing? Like, where did you grow up? Who raised you? And what's that overall picture and dynamic? What does that look like?
Yeah, I was actually just talking about this with my aunt yesterday. Um, when I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, literally. My father owned multiple nursing homes, like 5 in the Worcester, Massachusetts area. One day, she described it like everything just went snap, gone, and within like 24 hours, my grandfather was breaking ground to build us a duplex so we would have a place to live. When I was jumping forward a couple of years, when I was 6 years old, my mother passed away of overdose of alcohol and um, mixing illicit drugs, pills, and whatnot. About a year after that, my father moved me and my sister around. I have a book called 10 Homes in 11 Years out, published, and that describes that whole entire time. We moved 10 homes in 11 years. And we moved to Texas, we moved to Arizona. I lived on a Navajo reservation in Arizona. I lived in a uh the border of Mexico. That's where my father died when I was 11 years old. And then my grandfather caught wind of it up here. Now keep in mind that we didn't have cell phones. That was 30 plus years ago. We didn't have cell phones back then, you know. So yeah.
Yeah.
So the court magistrate um put us as a ward of the state, and me and my sister, and we had to they had to find out. Luckily my I'm Smith, but luckily my family name is Dorenzo, so it's a little more uncommon. So they called the Renzos up here in Massachusetts and got a hold of one of my uncles who got a hold of my grandfather. And luckily he sent someone down to get us. And we came back up here. After that, I didn't speak for 6 months, which I totally blocked that out until I was writing my 10 homes in 11 years, and I was talking to my sister about a lot of stuff that I blocked out. And she told me, yeah, you didn't talk for like 6 months after you came back. You don't remember that? I'm like, no, no, I don't, not at all. Like, yeah, I was shocked. I was shocked.
How are you dealing with continuously moving? Like, I would imagine you were potentially settling into some of these places, maybe connecting with friends or people in the community. What were you doing? Like, and how did you react or respond to always having to move, like leaving that place and then going to a new place?
I didn't make many friends, and every time I did, I ended up moving again. I what I remember, and what I remember isn't all that much, but what I remember is I made like acquaintances, and I remember some stuff like when I was on a Navajo reservation. I remember some of the folklore. I remember I was held down by some of the Navajo kids and forced to be a blood brother. That I remember for some reason. I remember
Sorry
some
to
of the
interrupt
other
you.
stuff.
What does that
It's
What does that
okay.
mean to be a blood brother?
That means to cut someone's hand and then cut your hand and then shake hands, and your blood is going into the other person's blood.
Right. And
Yeah,
what do you think
and you're.
they had done that to you?
Why do I think they did that to me?
Yeah.
Because I wasn't like them, so they wanted me to be like them. That's all I can think of.
Right.
I mean, normally when you become a blood brother, you become a brother, become a part of them,
So they
part
done it
of that person.
out of like goodwill, is it, would you say?
Not in a goodwill way, but maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
With the
mean, kids
death
will
of
be kids.
yeah, absolutely. With the death of your mother and like the death of your father as well, thinking back to when you were younger, um, how do you think that impacted your life, being young and then also just growing up and coming through life itself?
I was very angry and vengeful. Vengeful. Now I look back and I don't know who the hell I was vengeful. Vengeful towards God, maybe. I mean, I could never settle on one religion. I've researched them all pretty much, and what I've come to believe is if you think that microphone in front of you is God and that gets you through the day, then so be it. And I am no one to tell anybody different about any religion. But growing up, I wanted to go up there with a pair of boxing gloves and get in the ring with the guy. That's how I felt. That's how I felt. Honestly,
Yeah.
that's how I felt. And I was just a vengeful person. I didn't care about school. I cared about hanging out with my friends. I just had a friend. We just had a friend of ours die, the first of our main clique when I was growing up, and a group of us went up to see him in Vermont. It's a couple of states up, and I asked one of my friends, "What was I like growing up?" Because I honestly forget a lot of my youth, and he was like, "You were looking for a family, and we became that family." And yeah, now I feel bad for the kids nowadays. Like I have a 10-year-old, and I don't know if you ever seen the movie Stand by Me.
No, no, I haven't seen that movie.
You never seen rent it or however you guys do it over there, but watch Stand by Me. It's about a group of kids that went out and went on an adventure.
Mm.
But these days, like my 10-year-old, they they wouldn't go out in the wilderness and go out on an adventure.
Yeah,
They would have headphones on like we do
yeah.
and go on a Minecraft adventure or something like
Mm.
that. It's totally different.
Yeah, absolutely. The world, I mean, the world's changing, right? Like it's just evolving, and what we perceive to be normal when we were growing up, like what I perceive to be normal growing up is not what you perceive to be normal growing up. So it's just this, it's quite interesting actually, like just being a part of that evolution, and it's just like continually, let's say, stretching and morphing into something different. But then there is a feeling or sense of wanting the next generation to experience some of those true human experiences and qualities that those experiences gave us, like actually connecting and like climbing a tree with your friends and going to the skate park and just doing, yeah, just doing those sorts of things as opposed to just,
Yeah,
being mindlessly consumed by technology and just all this all the nonsense that's going on in the world, don't you think?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
When you
I
were,
look at go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, I'll let you go ahead.
I look at a lot of the stuff that's going on, like what happened in Canada a couple of weekends ago with the stabbings.
Yeah.
You know what happened right before school ended last year here in the USA. It's like when I was a kid, we would say, "Okay, you want to fight? Well, go over to the park across the street at the end of the day, and we'll have it out."
Yeah.
These days, kids bringing kids bringing knives, guns, whatever. And I remember one time in a school in in my city, somebody brought a knife into a school, and it was such a big deal because it was the first time that somebody brought a weapon into a school. Now it's like an everyday occurrence.
Hmm.
It's sickening.
Yeah, there's a 20-year-old that was sentenced to life imprisonment. This was about a month and a half ago in Australia. He was 20 in a food court too, like in a mall food court. He had a knife, and they were obviously just squaring off like two groups of people. There was like three people in each group, and this is like in a mall. It was just insane to watch. And then yeah, he obviously he pulled the knife out when the other guy was rushing, and they were both like 20, 21, and
Oh, wow.
it severed his neck, and he fell within the first 5 seconds and died. So it
Oh,
is, yeah, like we're almost like just losing our footing, like our grounding. I want to just circle back to um, when you reconnected with your uncle and with your sister as well. From that point to going to basic training, how did like what steered you towards wanting to go to the military?
my aunt pretty much told me, and it was much needed back then. She told me, get out, get a job, and don't come back because I was in such disarray at that time. You
Mm,
know, I had a cousin that I idolized. He in my eyes, he could do no wrong, and God rest his soul now. But he uh, he was doing crack cocaine. He had all he had a beautiful woman on each arm. He had the biggest truck in the area. Yeah, he had money flowing out of his pockets. You look at a cousin like that, a couple years older than you, and you think he's God.
mm. Yeah,
And
yeah. I mean, you definitely want that, right?
yeah, yeah,
Especially if
yeah,
your life is quite, if you're in a tough situation. I mean, you want that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I thought, oh, doing the same thing he's doing, I'm gonna get what he's got. So I was hanging out with him in all the bad places, and I often told him before he died in 2016. But I used to run P- post traumatic stress groups in one of the shelters here, and I used to tell him, I'm like, I idolized the wrong cousin. I should have idolized your brother. He's like, because his brother was a straight and narrow type of guy that
Mm.
and he's like, you're right, you should have. He's like, you're damn straight.
So going into the military, so you were hanging out with your cousin before the basic training. So is that when you developed the addiction to the crack cocaine?
Yeah,
And how was
before
it?
the military.
Yeah, how was it going to basic training? I could imagine it was cold turkey having to go through that. Or were you able to slip drugs in some through the
No,
back
no,
door?
that was cold turkey. No, especially in basic training, you wouldn't be able to get away with any. You couldn't smoke even a cigarette in basic training.
Take
No way.
can you can you walk me through like your average day in basic training for myself and for those who don't know anything about that?
Average day in basic training.
Like what would you expect to see in an average day of basic training?
You're waking up at well, before dawn. I was going to say the crack of dawn, but you're waking up before dawn. You're doing PT for about an hour or more. And then you're eating. And then you're doing various training all day. You're breaking for lunch. Then you're going back to more training all day. Breaking for dinner. And then I want to say after dinner, you're doing more training until probably 7 or 8 at night. And then you have enough time to do your laundry and shine your boots and stuff like that before, you know, before bed. And I want to say bed was like 9, 10 o'clock.
How many days is basic training? Is that
It
is it
it varies, but
right?
for the infantry, I want to say 4 months. I
Four
mean, that was
months.
back in '93 that I
Right.
was in basic training. So I want to say 4 months, and then you go into advanced infantry training, AIT, which was like 2 or 3 months. So
Mm. What were your biggest takeaways going through basic training?
me personally, how resilient I am. Yeah,
Was there a moment or activity or moments that you went through an experience that really showed you that?
yeah. Um, every PT test, physical training test. Yep, and like the obstacle test, because there's some obstacle tests where I'm 6 foot, and there's some obstacles where I had to literally like almost stand on my toes and reach up and pull myself up. There's some insane obstacles there in the live fire range,
Mm.
or the live
Yeah.
fire exercise where you're actually going underneath live fire.
Wow.
You're actually like low crawling underneath live fire, and that's to get you accustomed to pretty much being shot at,
Wow.
because a lot of the guys at the end of that, it was like, all right, if your social security ends in this, take a step backwards. Everyone that took a step backwards, you're going to Afghanistan or Iraq, or all the rest of you are going to your duty station. So a lot of them went straight to war at that time.
Wow. So you
Yeah,
graduated, is that correct?
yeah.
And so from there, when you graduated, where did they send you?
I went to Fort Carson, Colorado.
And what did they have you like? What specific roles did they have you doing once you graduated from basic training?
I was a Bradley driver, this small tank, the Bradley. Um, I was my I was my executive officer's Bradley driver, and then I was my commander's Bradley driver. But I stayed in except for a few times, I stayed in Colorado the whole time. I did spend 6 months in Cuba, where we had to guard Cuban and Haitian camps. Um, they tried to get over to the U.S. They were trying to on anything they could. Like if you have a regular table in front of you, they were trying to get over on something like that. If you can imagine that, like I knew a kid. I still have his picture in my photo album that lost every single member of his family in
Wow.
the ocean. Yeah. Yep. We took him in while we were there.
Hmm.
But yeah, I felt bad for that kid.
You speak about PTSD and CPTSD.
Mm.
Did you did you do you know when you began to experience it? Was it your childhood? Was it having gone through war? What part of your life do you think gave you that?
The doctors tell me that I got it when my mother died. It began when my mother died. That was my first traumatic experience. And when did I first experience it? When did I first know that I had it? I couldn't tell you. Like I know that I part of PTSD is fear, experiencing that feeling over and over again, and having flashbacks and anger outbursts and all that, and it's really been something that I've had all my life that I've had to learn to control over time. Yeah.
Hmm. So for anyone
So
who
it's really
for anyone who doesn't know what PTSD is, can you or complex PTSD? So how would you describe PTSD, and how would you like what makes CPTSD, complex post traumatic stress disorder, different?
well, post traumatic stress disorder. If you how I explain it to people, if you're going down a road and or in the military, I'll use my military version. If you're in the military and you're getting shot at, and you think that and then you come home and you hear a loud bang, like your wife drops a pan, and what sounds in your mind sounds exactly like a bullet. The next thing you know, before you even know what happened, you reacted. You reacted by hurtling down by one of the cabinets, or you reacted by grabbing your wife, or you reacted by you don't know how you reacted. There's many different ways you can react. Um, a lot of veterans they hear fireworks and they have flashbacks of war. Um, I was in a tank that exploded.
Oh wow.
So whenever
That's not
yeah,
good.
no, not at all. So whenever I hear a loud bang, I freeze, and I no matter what I'm doing, I gotta catch my breath. I gotta you know, consolidate my thoughts. I'm here. I'm talking to Jake. You know, and that sort of thing. I have a bunch of grounding techniques which you can find in a lot of my different books. I have a lot of the stuff overlapping, so people get a good taste of it all. But even in civilian life, like the loss of a loved one. You know, I lost my mother. I also lost 20 plus significant people in my life. And every one of them, you know, to the normal person, it doesn't get any better. You know, and just like to me, it doesn't get any better. It gets you get um like there's no skin that goes around your heart when every time it happens. You know. Just doesn't get any better. And like what I was talking about, a car accident. Like if you're in an accident at one street because somebody comes crashing into you, the next time you go down that street, you're gonna look both ways, but especially that way that car came before you go out on that street again, because you're always vigilant that that's going to happen again. Does that make sense?
Yes. What
Yeah.
what coping skills have you found to be beneficial for yourself?
For myself, yoga, uh, PTSD, meditation, um, breathing techniques
Mm.
like 7-11 breathing, in for 7 seconds, out for 11 seconds, slow, steady. Um, I use CBD oil now.
Oh wow, yeah, I want to get some of that here in New Zealand, but
Yeah,
they overprice it here in New Zealand. It's so expensive.
it is pretty expensive here too. Yeah, that's like $60 right there.
Wow.
It's not cheap.
Yeah.
It's not cheap.
It's just crazy how they make something like that so expensive, but you can get like another pharmaceutical painkiller for $2.
No, yeah. But martial arts, boxing, walking, that sort of thing. But any uh any coping skill that works for me might not work for you. You gotta find
Mm,
stuff that works for you.
mm.
And I I have an excellent book on that called Battle of a Lifetime. It's my addiction recovery book, but it's my best collection of coping skills by far.
And where can we find those books?
In lifelongexperience.net. And yeah, that's got all my books, and it goes to the links on Amazon and everything. Yep.
Absolutely, and we'll put those links and below this video in the description. And yeah, thank you for
Right.
talking about your PTSD experience and coping skills. That's something I live with as
Yeah.
well. So I thought this
Mm.
conversation would be interesting, and just to get another perspective, because you seem to be further along the journey. Um, so you have a lot of good insight. So I really appreciate that. Coming back to the tank, that tank. How
Mm.
did how did that how how did that tank
I can
explode?
laugh about it now, but I wasn't laughing about it
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah.
uh, well, I was at the National Training Center in California, and we were we didn't have our own equipment. We had to use their equipment, and we we got this Bradley. It was me, my commander, my CO, and my gunner, and we were firing rounds downrange, and one round must have got stuck in the barrel, and we didn't know it. And when we went to fire, the barrel blew up, and all I seen was the barrel flying downrange itself, the barrel itself flying downrange, and then everything filled up with smoke. My gunner and my BC are yelling, screaming like, "Oh, hell is breaking loose up there!" Because they're like right here, and so from what people tell me, because I don't remember any of this myself, but from what people tell me, I got out of my driver's hatch after I let down the ramp in the back, got my gunner and my BC out, my Bradley Commander out. They were burnt. I put them out literally, and then they were blinded for 6 months.
Wow,
Mm.
that's crazy.
6 months or so. Yeah.
Unfortunate too.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I was so close to getting out that when I got out, they were still blinded. But that was the estimated time that they were going to be blinded. And then when yeah, that's all I don't remember. But it's funny because I did all that and I don't remember doing it. But people tell me they're like, as we were running over, we seen you jumping out of your driver's hatch, getting them out. They were still kind of smoking, so you were putting them out. And
Oh, that's terrible.
yeah, yeah, and you were yeah, and then you like just sat down.
Just another day at the office.
I guess so. But then I was like in shock a lot
Mm,
of the time afterwards.
mm.
Like I don't have a memory that I can remember for like days after that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
PTSD can do that to you. You sort of
Mm,
start to disassociate and you can't remember anything. Like you don't even know. Even I think in the moment itself, when it's happening, it just feels, you can feel quite numb. You can feel quite identityless, almost just
yeah.
like you're just like there's no one home. It's just this experience that's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And like when my friend died, that's what I've been feeling like the past couple weeks. Like, and I work with people in recovery, and I've just been I'm an expert in my field, and like I've been faking it until I make it these past couple weeks because that's all I can do.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's okay. And that's okay, you know. We just, as long as we are doing the best to our ability to take care of ourselves. I mean, that's all we can
Yeah.
ultimately do.
Yeah.
Um,
Like I was on a podcast last week, and I'm talking to the host, and I'm talking about something, and all of a sudden it's like
gone.
blank. Like I'm like, uh, say something, because I totally lost it.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that. I
uh,
recently had an experience like that, being a guest
mm,
on a friend show, and yeah, that's just important as well. I think is like being a host is just having that awareness, you know, like knowing the cues, knowing when to like say something and when to let them say something as well. Like it's quite interesting actually being on both sides of the coin. So having like hosting a show and
mm,
then being a guest on a show. What
I'm
about,
sure.
yeah, Charles? What about when you left the military? What was what was life like for you after the military? Because I'll speak from personal experience here. Whenever I have new big changes, like I could imagine potentially having like a career change was a massive change in your life. So whenever I have big changes in my life, I tend to always be put back in that PTSD space where I start to feel like, you know, uncomfortable or just not grounded and not knowing where I'm going now. I just feel that empty space that
Yeah,
I typically
yeah.
feel when there are massive changes. So, what was life like after the military for you?
That was very interesting time for me. Um, I went from pretty much odd job to odd job. Like I
Sound
went
like me.
from yeah, yeah.
I've done that.
Like I
Yeah, I've
went
done that
from
earlier in my life.
mm, I went from sales to security. I ran a security company for a time. Um, and then in 2001, uh, I hit a really dark depression. uncle that raised me and my grandfather died a month apart from
Wow.
cancer. Yeah. And I just, it hit me that like I ignored them all those years before. Like I really, all those years that they tried to support me and I pushed them away because they were trying to be like a father figure. And at that time, I didn't want them to be a father figure. That was the furthest thing I wanted from my mind. All I wanted was my father back. I didn't want a replacement.
Did you
Yeah,
do you live with guilt still to this day? Have you been able to reconcile that?
I have. Yeah, yeah. In time, it took me probably 21 years to do that. But yeah, I was in such a dark space that I was like cutting on myself with a
Wow.
razor blade. Luckily, it was a razor blade, so you can hardly see anything.
Wow.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
can I just sorry to interrupt you. I just want
Mm.
to just know what prompted you to do that? Like if you can think back to then or remember.
To feel something other than what I was feeling. I was just feeling such darkness and like remorse and hatred and in myself.
Hmm. And how long
You
did
know,
that continue for? Like how long were you doing that for? And when did you stop? Did you come to some
probably
realization?
probably a few months
Wow.
it went on. Yeah, and it stopped when I finally wrote the words "F you world" on my arm, carved the words "F you world" on my arm.
Far out.
Yeah, yeah. Took a bottle of sleeping pills, and I went to sleep. And luckily, a few hours after that, my friends found me and rushed me to the hospital because I was done. I wanted to just end my life right there.
Man, yeah, such a difficult space to be in.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
thank God your friends were there, and I mean, yeah, there must be other plans for you why you survived. And I mean, the great work you're doing now. Did you think? Obviously, in that moment, you wouldn't have thought, you'd be doing what you're doing today.
yeah, yeah. But like I tell people, like you know, my son is 10 years old. That happened 20 years ago. You do the math. If I did that, if I succeeded, if my friends never found me, I wouldn't be here. Yeah, none of this would be going on. But my kid wouldn't be here either. My kid wouldn't have a life. You know, so many people they think that the life just can't happen after their worst part of their life. And you can edit this out if you want, but that's bullshit. It is. It, you never know what's going to happen after the worst part of your life is happening.
Mm,
Like you can have a kid, you can be a seven-time author, you can be speaking to people in all different parts of the world about your story. You never know.
absolutely.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
never give up.
absolutely no edits. Yeah, it's bullshit, and
Yeah.
it really is. But it's so difficult as well. Like when the mind begins to race, and then all of these thoughts are just appearing out of nowhere, and then we're attaching ourselves to them, and then when the ruminating begins, and then 2 days later, I mean, you're in a hole, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse. So coming back to those grounding techniques that you spoke about, the yoga, the meditation, the walking,
Hmm.
can you share with us when you decided to seek help and reach out and seek guidance, where did you go first? Did you go to a family member, a professional? Did you go to a book, a video? What
Well,
started that healing journey?
after that, after they sent me to the hospital sent me to the Veterans Administration in Brockton, Massachusetts, and after a stay there, they sent me to um, a place in Boston, Massachusetts, and they were supposed to take me in, but they were full, so I ended up on the streets in Boston for a little bit, and then I did whatever I could for those few weeks to survive. You know, sleeping in ATM booths and eating whatever I could, and then I got into veteran shelters, and that's when I really opened my eyes because I've seen other veterans suffering, and that showed me that I wasn't alone.
Hmm. And there is a lot of strength and comfort in knowing that there are other people going through similar things that you're going through, right? Like it just gives you a sense of connection.
Yeah, yep,
Like you
yep,
found your tribe. I'm here in New
yeah,
Zealand, Charles, and
yeah.
I don't know much about this, and you might know some information about it, or you might not, and that's okay. But I hear a lot in New Zealand about how there are a lot of homeless veterans in America. Is
Oh
that
yeah, tons.
like how does that happen? And like for me, obviously, I don't know much about it, but I always hear that, and I'm just
Mm,
thinking that it's just crazy how they can put their lives on the line, protect their country, but then it's almost like they just get swept to the side and just forgotten about, or or it could be like a bigger problem than that. But what is this? What are your general thoughts on the U.S. Veterans and homelessness?
there's a lot of different thoughts on that. Um, I would say my first thought on that is that there's always more that can be done.
Mm,
There's a lot that is being done, but there's always more that can be done. Um, and I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but a lot of veterans they come out of the military with an addiction, with drinking or drugging or what have you. And what I see, honestly, is one of the biggest problems that we have is that, like the shelters that I was in, you couldn't be in if you were drinking.
mm,
The shelters would fill up in the wintertime. The veterans would stop drinking, stop doing what they're doing, go in and keep warm. And then in the summertime, the springtime, the fall time, they would go out on the streets and drink and use. And that would be the cycle. Now, I'm
wow.
not saying that in a bad way
Right,
towards
right,
my
right.
fellow veterans. I'm just saying that that's the way that it goes, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've heard about homeless people just getting thrown in jail so they can have a home and 3 meals a day.
No, yeah,
Seems to
yeah,
be,
definitely.
which, hey,
No,
more power to
it's
them.
real.
Just some ingenuity there,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
bit of creativity.
yeah.
Um, I want to ask you two final questions, and I like to ask these questions because I'm interested to hear about what guests have to say and like what you specifically have to say. So, what are you most proud of doing in this life, Charles?
Being a father.
What? How has your life experience changed or impacted you, like in regards to being a father? Do you see yourself doing things that other fathers potentially don't do or do less of?
Yes. I mean, I don't personally see it, but I hear that I do it. And that is that excuse me, but me and my son's mother aren't together anymore. We separated when he was 1, 2, 1. And we're like really good friends. We just didn't make a good relationship. But I get him every single weekend. There's not a weekend that goes by. Everybody knows that he is where I'm at on the weekends. And from what I hear, a lot of fathers don't do that on the weekends. It's maybe once a month, maybe once a month. And like today, he got in trouble in school. He got into a skirmish. And and I was like, okay, what time do we gotta be there? And teachers have said it themselves, like, normally the dads are not here. I'm like, well, I'm not a normal dad, so let's begin. Because I'm not going anywhere.
Mm. Yeah, I often
You
think
know,
about how just like think just I can just edit this part out. Maybe actually no editing. Just how no strictly no editing. So I think about the validity of being a father in regards to, let's say, you, for example, spending 2 quality days with your son versus a father who, okay, he puts a house over your head, but he's not there emotionally, like energetically, like personally. So, like personally for me, I feel like giving 2 days, like a genuine 48 hours to someone is worth a lot more than 7 days of just distance and disconnection. So
yeah, and
I'm with
then
you, man.
right after this, I'm gonna be on the phone with him for an hour. So
That's beautiful. Congratulations as well.
I
So
appreciate that. Thank you.
the last question, right?
Okay.
What is your hope for the world and future generations?
It's okay to swear.
Of course. Yeah.
It gets his damn head out of its ass.
Yeah, no, totally. I'm with you on that one, Charles. Hey,
No,
look.
I just feel that, like, we leave this world to my son
Mm,
and
yeah,
kids like him.
yeah.
And I often, every time I look at the news, I'm like, what the hell are we leaving them?
Mm,
Like, we got to do better than this for them, not even for us, but for them.
yeah.
Because we just have to.
Mm, yeah, I
It's
mean, yeah.
at this point, we don't know if we're gonna get nuked from one day to the next.
And that's it,
You
right?
know,
Like you almost have to switch the news off because all you're hearing is, crooked Hillary or creepy Biden or, you know, whatever. There's so many polarizing topics in the world, and people have lost the ability to communicate with each other, to really listen and be open and non-judgmental, engaging with another person. And it's just led to this. And I mean, it almost feels like it's just getting worse and worse and worse.
no, yeah, definitely. Like a
Awesome.
friend of mine was saying today, like we got what we got, and Biden's like my president. I don't like him, but he's my president. Like, yeah, he's not mine. He
Well,
might be yours, but he's not. He's not mine. I'm waiting for you know who the Rock is, right?
Dwayne, yeah.
Yeah,
Can you
I that
smell what the Rock is cooking?
that's who I want to be president. If you're listening to this, Rock, I want you to be president.
Oh, all right, Charles. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time. Incredible life you had. Sorry, incredible
Thank you,
life you've
Jake.
had, and thank you for your wisdom, your teachings, and for being vulnerable and just expressing yourself on this platform here. So, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jake. I really appreciate that.